What is a man? Or more specifically, what does it mean to be a man? What must one do in order to become a man? These are questions that have plagued young boys and men for millennia. I wouldn't presume some kind of divine knowledge that would allow me to answer such questions with 100% accuracy. These are questions that have never been given a universal answer, and I doubt that they ever will. What we can do, though, is speculate, theorize, and philosophize in order to try and get as close to an answer as possible. Naturally, each unique individual will have unique and individualized answers to questions like this. I find it useful, however, to dig into these unique and individual answers to try and tease out some details and gain some better understanding. Most of life's deepest, unanswerable questions can usually be found in stories. Stories have been the method through which humanity has managed to understand itself and the universe at large. Long before the first humans had ever developed what would eventually become a writing system, we told each other stories. Stories are the method by which we understand the world and each other, so it's natural that these ancient stories usually contained some kind of moral wisdom or truth. Modern stories also carry these nuggets of truth and introspection, though the casual observer could easily miss it. Our stories were once simple and straightforward, but grew more obfuscated and complex as humanity advanced. You can still tease out these nuggets of truth from modern stories, but it requires some deeper digging. That brings us to the question I asked a moment ago, and the topic of today's video. What makes a man is something men have asked themselves since the dawn of time. I believe that the film trilogy of How to Train Your Dragon gives us an insight into these questions. How to Train Your Dragon is ultimately a story about manhood, growing up, responsibility, and moving on. It's a story that tackles these concepts and extrapolates on the themes of masculinity and leadership, while still being a story the whole family can enjoy. What I want to do is take this story, dig a little deeper, and see what we can tease out of the details to help us get closer to an answer for some of these questions. But before we jump in, remember to please hit the like button. Engagement is the main metric YouTube uses to push out my videos to new people, and short of leaving a comment, the like button is the next best thing to tell YouTube that it should show this video to more people. It's easy, it's free, and you'd be doing a massive service to this channel and community. If you really like the channel, then consider subscribing as well, so that you don't miss follow-up videos when they go live. The first movie in the trilogy is undoubtedly a coming-of-age story. It's the story of young Hiccup, who is simultaneously the son of the chief, but also the town's biggest embarrassment. He stumbles over his own feet, doesn't know what to say to get others to like him, and generally makes any given situation worse because of his awkward personality. Conversely, Hiccup is also incredibly inventive, compassionate, and stubborn when he set his mind on something. Throughout the first movie, we see how Hiccup is struggling to gain the approval of his father and his peers, and in doing so he does something nobody has ever been able to do: shoot down a Night Fury. This is what he was looking for. This is his chance to prove to his village that he deserves a place among them, and that it can be every bit the bloodthirsty Viking his father is. Unfortunately, Hiccup discovers he doesn't have the stomach for killing, and sees something of himself in the terrified trapped dragon. So, against his better judgment, he releases the dragon, and in doing so sets himself down a unique and uncertain path. He befriends the dragon and even helps him learn to fly again with some prosthetics. But this doesn't repair the rift between Hiccup and his father or the village. In fact, it's what ultimately causes the biggest source of conflict. What I love about this first movie is that it exemplifies the enthusiasm and optimism that you find in young people. Young teenagers, and even up to young 20-somethings, are often very jaded about the state of the world. But dig a little deeper and you'll find that they often have a lot of enthusiasm and optimism to make the world a better place. This idealistic fervor is, to me, quite intoxicating at times, and makes me believe that perhaps we can actually change things for the better. Hiccup exemplifies this, Despite the system he grew up in and the prejudices of the society he comes from, he strongly believes that he can make the world a better place for both humans and dragons. The older Vikings are pretty set in their ways and quite stubborn, but it ends up being the youths who bring about societal change. The first movie teaches that regardless of your environment, you can make a difference if you try. You can make the world a better place. You can be the change you wish to see in the world. This is a crucial part of growing up, I believe. As you age, you begin to realize that the world works a certain way and that you likely have no way to change it. At the same time, the energy and vitality of youth practically pushes you to still try. It's this friction, this conflict, that epitomizes the struggle of young people coming of age. The second movie takes place some time after the first, and in this movie we can see that Hiccup has truly come into his own. It's in this movie that we see how the young, gangly, awkward boy from the first movie is turning into a respectable young man. Hiccup, still the optimist and idealist, is traveling the world with Toothless in an effort to discover what there is to see beyond the horizon. He's managed to convince his own people that accepting dragons is important, and his father is now so proud of him that he even suggests to Hiccup that he should take over as chief. Hiccup, naturally, avoids the topic and just wants to explore and not be bogged down by the duties and responsibilities of running a town. While this is all happening, Hiccup discovers the existence of a warlord that wants to amass a dragon army and use it to conquer the world. Drago Bloodfist is a name that instantly causes Hiccup's father, Stoic, to panic and begin preparing for bloody conflict. Hiccup argues that he could talk to Drago and convince him that dragons aren't to be feared or subjugated. Hiccup runs off against his father's orders and in the process discovers his long-lost mother, who now oversees a wild dragon nest and works to keep dragons safe. The central conflict in this movie, however, is the conflict between idealistic optimism and cold, hard reality. To Hiccup, the ideal would be to travel the world, changing people's minds about dragons and traveling where his heart takes him. But the cold, hard reality is that despite what Hiccup wants, his father is right in that he needs to start thinking like a chief. His father is right in that some people, like Drago Bloodfist, can't be reasoned with. Hiccup wants freedom and to chase his dreams. In fact, didn't he spend the whole first movie proving that he was right despite what everyone else said? Didn't he prove himself and grow up to where he could now do what he wanted? He saved the village, for crying out loud. And that's where this movie really shines. Despite all of that, despite him being 100% right about the dragons, and despite him saving the village, it doesn't matter. The reality of the situation is that he's not a kid anymore. He's a man now and needs to accept the duty and responsibility that comes with it. And it's not just the duty and responsibility of being an adult he has to deal with. It's the duty and responsibility of a young chief who must also look out for the well-being and safety of his people. And despite his best efforts to avoid it, he can't escape this duty. In fact, he's practically forced into it when his father falls in battle and Drago Bloodfist proves he's impossible to reason with. The third and final movie, however, delivers the most bittersweet message of the three. The first movie taught that the world won't agree with you, but you can still overcome and make a difference. The second movie taught that with age comes duty and responsibility, even if you don't want it. In fact, running from it will only make things worse. The third movie, however, teaches that all the things that helped you get through the struggles of the past, all the things that helped you become the person you are today, will, at some point, be left behind. Young Hiccup is now officially the chief of Berk and has turned it into a real little dragon utopia. Unfortunately, this makes them a big target and draws the attention of a notorious dragon hunter. This means they must relocate the village to a safer destination where they can live in peace with their dragons. On top of that, Toothless attracts the attention of a female dragon and embarks on his own mission to make her his mate. Hiccup is torn because on one hand, he must leave his childhood home and travel into the great unknown while still keeping his people safe. On the other hand, he also wants to help his friend with his female dragon issue. Hiccup, still an idealist, wants to achieve both by finding the hidden world of dragons where they can escape to, and at the same time convince the female to join the village. This ideal is short-lived when he realizes, near the end, that his desires were incredibly selfish. What's best for his people is to live in the world of humans, not flee underground to a realm of dragons. What's best for Toothless is not to keep him at Hiccup's side whilst trying to win over the female, but to let him go and live the life of a dragon with his own kind. It's a tug of war between doing what Hiccup wants and doing what's right. It's a story about learning how to let go, a story about how to say goodbye to not only a very close and irreplaceable friend, but to an entire phase of life. Hiccup was once the young teen who just wanted to change the world. He was then the young adult clinging to the ideals of youth whilst coming into his own as a person in the real world. And now Hiccup is the man, the chief, and the friend who must make the sacrifice for his people and those he cares about. The parting of ways between the dragons and humans symbolizes how, once we grow up, we must eventually say goodbye to those who we once were. We go through different phases of life, and part of growing up is recognizing that and moving on. Part of growing up is learning how to make difficult choices for the benefit of others. Part of growing up is learning how to say goodbye, but still appreciating what you had while you had it, since it's what made you into the person you are today. Overall, the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy tells the story of a young man becoming an adult. It's a story of how a man is forged in the flames of hardship, struggle, and loss, while still appreciating the laughter, fun, and adventure that was had along the way. It's a trilogy that speaks on the idealism of youth, the practicality of maturity, and the journey one takes to go from one to the other. To some, this trilogy of movies is just a decently produced bunch of films to keep the kids busy. Fun to watch, sure, but little more than good entertainment. To me, however, it's a tale that touches on deeper truths in life and that properly displays how a young boy turns into an independent man in his own right. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider liking the video, since that's the most impactful metric YouTube uses to gauge whether or not to recommend the video. And if you'd like to see more, consider hitting that subscribe button. Anyway, thank you for your time, take care, and we'll talk again very soon.